Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Alyeska Pipeline Service Company, sustaining Alaska's pipeline and its operations today and into the future.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks again for joining us here at KAKM Studios for Thursday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy. On the morning chart here, we've got a flood watch out for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, and that lasts at least at this point through Saturday afternoon, and that's for the potential of flooding that is something more than what's occurring up there right now. And moving on to the breakup map, everything south of the Brooks Range open. Up there to the north, I've got some open on the rivers up here with still a fair amount of ice back up toward the Brooks Range, but the eastern one there, some open right on out to the coastline. And up next, satellite imagery. Pretty good day here over the eastern interior, all the way up to the North Slope where they saw mostly sunny skies, and even on out to areas of the Arctic coast, and sunshine across the entire panhandle, although there were low clouds up in close toward the coast there, but staying offshore. That allowed temperatures to rise into the 60s and lower 70s in that area, and a partly to mostly day here across south central Alaska. So moisture lifting northward brought a few showers into the central interior and back out to the northwest, all the way out across the Noatak Valley, Kivalina, Kotzebue. Had a little bit of shower activity today, but really the amounts just a few hundredths of an inch. Low pressure spinning out here over the northern Bering Sea, keeping it cloudy with showers out in that area, some of which may have moved on to the southwest coast today, but again extending up across Norton Sound into the southern coast of the Seward Peninsula to the Bering Strait. And then a big mass of moisture sliding northward in association with this warm front here, and rain up to the Alaska Peninsula, spreading up to Kodiak Island, and has since spread into Kodiak State Airport and probably up into actually the Barrens now. Same thing for Bristol Bay, King Salmon reporting rain, and that all extending back to the south and southwest there, with a lot of clouds in over the Gulf of Alaska, up into Prince William Sound, and some scattered shower activity up here over the central interior. And again, back to the northwest there along that first cloud bank, right up to the northwest. And then again, some showers scattered from St. Lawrence Island, again across Norton Sound and Nome, on down the coastline there to about Nunivak Island, with even northern Bristol Bay had a few scattered showers throughout the day today, and then a lot of clouds out over the Bering Sea. This area of moisture tonight will slide northward along with the frontal boundary and the low pressure area approaching the Alaska Peninsula. So wind and rain on the increase, Kodiak Island up into the Barrens and the North Gulf Coast, with rainfall chances increasing here over Prince William Sound, also into Cook Inlet and then back to the southwest there. Otherwise, this evening and tonight, the interior partly to mostly cloudy, some scattered shower activity around, but staying pretty good here over the Copper River Basin, eastern Tanana Valley, then maybe a few breaks back here to the west, and the North Slope staying dry with probably just a few clouds there, just possible areas of low clouds, fog, and maybe some flurries there on the east side, but out west staying dry and mostly clear. And no change here for the southeast coast, just a few clouds possible there with light winds and definitely dry conditions, with the rain here over the southwest interior, and that low stuck out over the northern Bering Sea. Will have a few showers, some of which may rotate in to the Pribilof Islands, but it looks like it'll be mostly off the coast. And then out to the west, the next system, which will push eastward tomorrow and bring some rain to AKwx and possibly Atka, but it should be mostly dry and maybe a few breaks in the overcast there for the eastern Aleutians. Just areas of clouds over the Pribilof, southeastern Bering Sea. Any shower activity out here now getting pretty widely scattered, but clouds definitely in the forecast. And this low now shifting northward into Bristol Bay with an actual trough extending right up into eastern Norton Sound. Probably a low center up there as well. And the frontal position roughly right through here tomorrow afternoon. So a good gradient here with a high to the east, lower pressure back to the west, that with this center moving northward. Look for some pretty gusty winds, passes eastern, like Turnagain Arm, the upper hillside, as well as probably the western Alaska Range. Seeing gusts 30 to 50 miles per hour with pretty windy conditions and gales also to the south across the Barrens, Kamishak Bay, and maybe Kodiak Island, with periods of rain along the North Gulf Coast. This area moisture may or may not reach the outer coastline here of the northern panhandle, but back to the west, definitely see an increase in the chance for rain. But it should be a mostly sunny day here for the southeast coast, especially over the southern areas with continued offshore flow, which means temperatures could rise into the lower 70s down south. And again, up here to the north, really no change. Light easterly winds, maybe some patchy fog and flurries on the eastern Arctic coast, but possibly staying VFR out to the west. And then for Saturday, we'll see this whole thing pulls way up across the west side of the state here, in across the Chukchi Basin back to Russia, and an upper level trough, both at the surface and aloft, pushing northeastward. And southerly flow in advance of that trough keeps the Gulf Coast here, Prince William Sound, especially the southern Kenai Peninsula, on the wet side with periods of rain and fog extending but tapering off as you reach Yakutat and beyond. Just a risk of some of that slipping into the Elfin Cove area. Kind of an increase in the clouds here over the southeast coast, panhandle of the, especially the low variety of patchy fog out along the coastline. But inland should be better. And kind of breaking out there with this weak ridge popping up over Bristol Bay for Kodiak Island. So westerly flow there might clear the skies out a little bit along the east side of the island. And then that next system, a pretty good batch of moisture, will bring rain to the eastern Aleutians, into the Alaska Peninsula, and probably northward, possibly to the Pribilof Islands, with the main low center hanging back to the southwest. Otherwise, maybe a little bit of mixed moisture there for the western Arctic coast. Look for more clouds up there, and about the same story for the east side as you've seen. Otherwise, mostly cloudy here over the interior with pretty good, or at least scattered showers, probably more numerous in some areas than others, with possible thunderstorms being triggered there from the eastern Alaska Range up on toward and just west of the Eagle area. But definitely kind of cool and cloudy conditions for the first day of the weekend, and again wet out to the west here. For temperatures this afternoon, Haines pushed up to 70 this afternoon, at least 70, otherwise 60s across most of the remainder of the Panhandle, 56 at Sitka, 62 in Juneau, with Annette Island hitting 66 today, otherwise AKwx had 62. North Gulf Coast, lower 50s around Cordova to near 60 in the Valdez area. Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet, mostly in the mid to upper 50s today. Also for the Susitna Valley at mid-afternoon. Gulkana reached 66, and up north of the mountains, Northway 64, Tok 66, Delta at 64, and Fairbanks had 65. Tanana, a few more clouds and some showers around, just reached 60 today, while McGrath only managed 50. Up to the north, mid to upper 50s there across the Koyukuk and Yukon Valley areas, 40s in the Brooks Range. And then on the north slope there, we had airfield up to 51 today. And temperatures even out along the Arctic coast in the upper 30s to lower 40s, the exception being 32 at Barrow. And in the northwest, 40s to lower 50s up in that area, and mostly in the 40s for the Seward Peninsula. And then we've got lower 50s and 40s here as you get out southwest across the deltas and along the coast. Savunga had 36 today, but Nome was 43, and Tin City had 40. lower to mid 40s across the Pribilofs this afternoon. That same temperature pattern also across the eastern Aleutians. Then from about Unalaska, you reach the upper 40s, but mid to upper 40s there for the entire Alaska Peninsula. A little bit warmer up toward King Salmon, and right around 50 for Kodiak Island. Lows for tonight there for the Panhandle, mostly in the upper 30s to upper 40s across the area, warmest in the south, 40s for the North Gulf Coast, 40s south central Alaska, also out here west and southwest, looking lower 40s, lower 30s here at the Bering Strait or from St. Lawrence Island into the Bering Strait, and 20s and 30s for the Arctic coast and North Slope area. For the highs tomorrow, back into the 60s to lower or mid 70s here for the interior areas, mostly around the Tanana Valley on up toward the Yukon there and over to the east. Otherwise, 50s to near 60 south central Alaska. And again, a pretty good day coming up for most of the southeast coast here with temperatures inland areas in the mid 60s and probably reaching the lower 70s down south. 40s out here to the west, 40 to 45, southern Bering Sea. All of the Aleutians, upper 30s again for St. Lawrence Island. And tomorrow morning's flying weather, again, has it pretty good here along the North Slope and even along the Arctic coast there with a kind of persistent area of IFR over the northern Bering Sea, marginal for the Aleutians with IFR pushing into the west there. Then we've got IFR here along and south of the Alaska Peninsula across Kodiak Island and extending eastward. Some of that slipping on up into the western Cook Inlet area on the east side of the western Alaska Range. And then tomorrow that whole area advances northward and probably will be into Prince William Sound, especially on the west side there. And this may push in a little bit closer to the, well, I'd look for at least maybe some marginal stuff from Port Alexander all the way up to Yakutat, IFR for Bristol Bay. No change out in the Bering Sea here. And then possible IFR right along the eastern coastline up to the north. And for passes, Anaktuvuk, good VFR, looking VFR for Adigan as well. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR, except IFR on the eastern approaches of both passes with that same forecast also good for rainy, while windy, VFR through the pass and to the north, but look out for some marginal conditions south side. And for Isabel, just marginal. Ventasta, VFR trending toward marginal VFR, especially on the southern entrance throughout the day. And for Tanita, marginal. Portage, IFR. Chilkoot and White, both staying pretty good there with VFR conditions. And the freezing levels, warmer air, south to north flow here, so freezing levels increase markedly there from Kodiak Island on down to the south. And again, this is for late tonight, very early tomorrow morning, about 8,000 feet over the Panhandle, 6,000 feet up the east side to the Brooks Range, and then kind of a very broad area of 2,000 feet out here covering much of the Bering Sea and most of the Aleutians with the surface from the Bering Strait up along the north side of the Brooks Range. And as far as icing forecasts go, of course, with all the moisture, could be some light and isolated moderate rime icing from Bristol Bay coming across Kodiak Island and then up along the coast there, possibly reaching this far into this Panhandle, but really likely staying back to the west. And then that extends right up across the Copper River Basin, just about all of south central Alaska, and some pretty hit and miss areas possible with the shower activity, mixed type icing up in that area. Pretty icing free out here over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, except for that batch pushing eastward there to Adak and possibly Atka. Winds aloft, again showing south to north flow here with a pretty sharp ridge right through this area as this trough continues to dig from British Columbia down into the northwest. So northerly flow behind that feature and on the eastern side of this ridge at about 90 knots, keeping it dry there for the southeast coast. And just a big trough out here to the west. 9,000 foot winds showing that low lifting northward towards Bristol Bay. So a pretty good south to north flow here, 30 to 40 knots right up into the Susitna Valley. Lighter up to the north and northeast, just 10 to 15 knots. Very light variable winds there. Kind of got a stronger northwest breeze going here along the central and southern southeast coast. Westerlies 15 to 20, southern Bering Sea and the Aleutians. 3,000-foot winds looking like this, much like the 9,000-foot winds, low tracking northward and ridging back through here, so good south to north flow. Again, 25 to as high as 40 knots, advancing northward into southern Alaska. Mostly easterlies here, 10 to 20 knots up over the interior, lighter for the Arctic coast. West to northwest, 15 to 30 knots on the Pribilofs, down across eastern Aleutians and the Alaska Peninsula. And then those stronger northwesterlies here off the central and south coast. For turbulence, with that, look for some areas of there, light to very isolated moderate, below about 4,000 feet. Otherwise, with the stronger winds, moderate turbulence pretty likely here. Kodiak Island, the Aleutian Range, northeast Bristol Bay, right up into Cook Inlet, following the Alaska Range over to the east, with less turbulence back across the Alaska Peninsula and into about Unalaska Island. Smooth to the north, smooth back to the west, including the Aleutians. And after Stargazer, I'll be back with a marine forecast.
Mars Midnight Madness. Hey there, stargazers. I'm Dean Regas, astronomer from the Cincinnati Observatory.
And I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Plot Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida. We're here to help you find your way around the sky. Hey Dean, do you feel a buzz in the air?
Yes, I feel a certain presence, something I've not felt for 26 months. Is it here?
It is. That planet is back, the one that people get very excited about.
The one that people want to see in a telescope.
The one that evokes a warlike deity.
The one that gets people thinking about life beyond our world.
It's Mars time!
I call it Mars-a-palooza.
Mars Madness.
We'll show you how to see the red planet at its best after midnight. Okay, we have our sky set for May 18th at 10:30 p.m. facing southeast. A waxing gibbous moon hangs high in the sky near a bright blue star named Spica. But closer to the horizon is our featured planet, Mars.
Mars will look really bright orange, and it'll be brighter than any star in the sky and shine nearly as bright as Jupiter. And this week you just might be able to see one of Dean's favorite stars next to Mars.
Can I say its name?
Go for it.
That is the star Shuba, in the head of the constellation Scorpius the Scorpion.
Shuba, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, as the nights roll on, the moon will wander across the background stars. Here is 10:30 p.m. on the next night, May 19th. And here it is on May 20th and May 21st.
On May 22nd at 10:30 p.m., the moon will have cozied up next to another planet. That's Saturn. But this is Mars' show, so Saturn, you'll have to wait. May 22nd is the night when Mars is closest to the Earth and looks the brightest in the sky. Mars comes close to the Earth like this every 26 months. Here's how it works. The Earth and Mars both orbit the Sun, but the Earth is closer to the Sun and travels faster than Mars does. So every 26 months, the Earth goes between the Sun and Mars.
We call that opposition, when Mars is on the opposite side of the sky from the Sun. Not all oppositions are created equal. The Earth and Mars do not have perfectly circular orbits, so their distance from the Sun varies.
On August 27, 2003, Mars was closer to the Sun than usual, and Earth was farther from the Sun. That put the two planets only 34.5 million miles from each other, about as close as they ever get.
Then on March 3, 2012, Mars was farther from the Sun at the same time Earth was closer to the Sun. At that opposition, the two planets were separated by 62.6 million miles. That's almost twice as far as in 2003.
This opposition on May 22, 2016 is a fairly close one. Will be about 47 million miles from Mars, so it should be very bright in our sky. At this opposition, Mars rises in the southeast, which means it won't go very high in the sky.
And it's best to see Mars when it's higher up. Let's make it midnight on May 22nd. There, that's better. Now we can see Mars and more of the stars in the Scorpion.
Let's stay up even later and see Mars at its highest point in the sky, between 1 and 2 a.m. This is also the best time to look at Mars in a telescope. Through a backyard telescope, you can see the orange disk of the planet.
Through larger telescopes, you might be able to see mysterious dark markings on the planet and maybe an ice cap.
To see Mars's 2 tiny moons, you'd need a really large scope and a super clear sky. May 22nd may not be a good day for that, since the full moon will light up the night. The red planet is back, so celebrate Marsapalooza when you can see Mars this week after 10:30 p.m. at its biggest and brightest.
And stay up past midnight to see Mars higher in the sky. Get some friends together for a Mars Midnight Madness party as you keep looking up.
Welcome back. We're looking at the sea surface temperature chart here. Pretty good warming, again continuing here along the coast there, that southerly current up into Norton Sound, and getting pretty warm there in Kuskokwim Bay, back along the northern Bristol Bay area. And then even some warmer conditions sliding through the Bering Strait and on up into the Chukchi Basin, with the cooler conditions here, again, where the ice is laying farther to the south. And again, right in that area from east side of St. Lawrence Island back through here, still some varying amounts of ice. And area here over Norton Sound that could disappear off the chart any time, and then starting to thin out up here through the Bering Strait and to the north. And of course, areas of open water here along portions of the western Arctic coast. And moving on to marine forecasts, northwest small craft advisories here for the south coast, northwest 20 for Clarence Strait, becoming lighter into the central inside waters. Northern Lynn Canal, south 10 with 2-foot seas, and these winds kind of drop off and become more westerly on up to the north. And then for Saturday, we've got west-southwest, 15 knots, 7 to 8 foot seas there, but small craft advisories continue here for the south coast with 6-foot seas. Northwest, 15 to 20 from Stevens Passage down into the Dixon entrance area, and a little brisker out of the south there for Northern Lynn Canal. For the Prince William Sound area, winds increasing to 25 knots. Out of the east tomorrow, seas building to 6 feet. Small craft advisories from the North Gulf Coast here. Then dropping back to 20 knots to the west, and then back up to 25 for the Barren Islands. South 25, Kodiak Island, we've got gales in the forecast for Kamishak Bay. East 20 for Shelikof Strait. And Cook Inlet, northeast 10 to 20 knots, 3 to 4 foot seas. And those switch direction for Saturday. Light southerlies for the northern inlet, southwest 20 with 5-foot seas here, southern inlet on down into Kamishak Bay, southwest 20 knots, Barren Islands, western North Gulf Coast, turning southerly to the east. Light southeast breeze there for Prince William Sound, and small craft advisories for west winds 25 to 30 knots there for Kodiak Island. And out to Bristol Bay, west 20 tomorrow, and northwest 20 here on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. And then those become gales there on the south side and turn southerly there from Castle Cape on up towards Sitkinak with gale force southerly winds. And then for Saturday, those turn westerly, minimum gales there out of the west, and 30-knot winds here for the Alaska Peninsula. Again, 8 to 14-foot seas there, heaviest on the south side. And then Bristol Bay up to 30 knots with 8-foot seas. For the Aleutians, eastern Aleutians, mostly west to northwest winds, 20 to 25 knots, and 15 to 20-knot west-southwesterlies here for the central Aleutians, and pretty light east-southeasterlies there for the far western zones. Those turn northwest or north-northwest out there at the same speed, 15 to 25 knots for the central Aleutians for Saturday, and then small craft advisories southwesterlies, 25 to 30 knots, seas 7 to 11 feet for the Fox Islands. And for the southwest coast, north of Nunivak Island, southeast 15, west 15, south of the island. Same thing for the Pribilofs, Light variable winds at about 15 for the northern Bering Sea and southeast for St. Lawrence Island. Then for Saturday, southwest winds here, St. Lawrence Island and the southwest coast, but up to 30 knots south of Nunivak Island. Light southwesterlies for the Pribilofs and west 15 there for St. Matthew Island. On the Arctic coast, we've got easterly winds, all 10 to 15 knots in the forecast for tomorrow, turning northeast and then back to east. So really nothing too heavy for Friday and even Saturday, although you do pick up some small craft advisories here on the eastern coast. Otherwise, from Wales to Cape Beaufort, northeast 15 to 20, easterlies 15 to 20 for the east side. And for the forecast tonight, again, here comes the next storm. Winds increasing, definitely rain spreading north, a little bit back to the west, also to the northeast there into Prince William Sound and up Cook Inlet, and then mostly cloudy scattered showers over the interior, and stays fair over the southeast coast, probably through tomorrow as well. I don't think quite this much moisture will make it to the coastline tomorrow afternoon. Better chance for keeping mostly sunny, especially south with the northeast flow. This low center creating some pretty gusty winds, 30 to 40 miles per hour for the higher elevations, channeled areas. Also pretty breezy there for Kodiak Island. And then for Friday, that low kind of splits. One portion develops off here to the east, the other one kicks back to the northwest. And then that's followed by an upper trough, both at the surface here, coming northward. Probably spread some rain up Cook Inlet in the afternoon, and then the southerly flow in advance of that keeps the North Gulf Coast pretty wet and cloudy, and a few more clouds and maybe the risk of a shower over the Panhandle, and more moisture with this system spreading rain into the eastern Aleutians to the Alaska Peninsula. Let's look at the weather for tonight. Thanks for joining us.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.